Okay, welcome to another episode of the Business of Rowing Madcast. I'm John, and today we're going to be talking about something that is really, really important within the coaching community. And if you're a coach or just getting started as a coach, or maybe you've been dealing with this, for the duration of your coaching career, and that is the question is, how do you stay fit and active while pursuing a coaching career? And today, to talk about this, is a very active coach, Greg Hughes from Princeton Heavyweight Men's Rowing. Greg, super stoked to have you here. I have to say, I wanted to have this conversation, and I've seen you on Strava, and I was like, wow, he's really, really active. He's getting out there. He's getting after it, and he's obviously a part of a big, a major top tier competitive men's rowing team. How does he do it? How does he find the time to stay active? So welcome. I think the first question, one thing we always start with is, just tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit of your background in rowing, and where you are today.
Yeah, well, and thanks a lot, John, for having me here. This is awesome, and I appreciate these kinds of conversations. I think it's great to share uh things about coaching that maybe are not like the basics, the nuts and bolts. Like we talk enough
Right,
about technique and other random things, and I think there's a lot to being a coach. Like it is a lifestyle, I
right,
believe, and I think it's important to figure out how it works, right? How you and I think the second piece that I think is really important when you think about uh why it's important to include fitness in
sure,
your coaching career is like it allows for longevity. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's funny. Like I wouldn't say that I'm training. Okay,
hmm
so my assistant coach, Emma Carlisle Reski, she's
hmm
training right now for an Ironman. She is
okay,
training, right? I
right,
work
right,
out. And I
okay,
think
yeah,
I think there's
yeah,
a difference there, right?
sure, sure, sure,
Uh,
sure.
but it is something that is really important to me, and I think I definitely feel better when I do it.
hmm
Um, and so I think part of it for me is I want to feel good
Yeah,
on a
yeah,
daily
yeah, yeah, yeah.
basis. I sleep better. I
hmm
I I feel more energetic at work.
hmm
um I think it's also important for me because it allows me the opportunity to uh have a little window in my day
Right, right,
where I do kind of check out, right?
right, right, right.
And
Well,
so like I think it is important.
sure. Let's go back a little bit, and because you're an alum, right? You rode at Princeton, right? And you were on the lightweight team, is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Right, right, right. And you've been coaching since graduation, right? So walk us through your career a little bit, and sort of where you are now.
Yeah, I started rowing in high school. I was,
Uh-huh.
I ended up going to high school. I grew up in the Puget Sound on Whidbey Island, and not far
Okay,
from
so
Whidbey.
you're a West Coast guy. I didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right, all right.
But yeah, so I grew up there, and I was looking for options for high school,
Uh-huh.
and came across Brentwood College School, which is a boarding school up on
Sure.
Vancouver Island, and that's
Right,
where I went
right.
to high school. I was an athlete in junior high,
Uh-huh.
and ran track, played football, which is hilarious to think back on now because I was the same size then as I am now. I was tiny, and but I ended up going up to Brentwood, and that's where I found rowing and totally fell in love
Uh-huh.
with it. It just became my thing. So
Yeah.
I rowed there, was recruited to come out east. When I arrived at Princeton, I had never been here before. Uh, I
So
didn't under
you came sight unseen.
That's correct. I didn't realize that it was in New Jersey until at some point in the spring before I arrived here. And then I had to go and look on a map and try to figure out where New Jersey was. I was like a total country bumpkin, but there's a history of athleticism in my family. Like
Yeah.
I have some cousins that were remarkable athletes. One of my cousins was she was won the World Cup in aerial skiing in
Uh-huh.
1979.
Uh-huh.
And other cousins that were very competitive at a pretty
Okay,
high.
so very athletic family. Like it was just all around growing up.
Yep. Yeah. And yeah, and the same thing, like things that I like, just being out and being active was a part of our family. And, my dad and I, the things that we would do regularly, we would ski together all the time. That was
Yeah.
the thing that we did. And he picked
Right.
that up from his grandparents, like his grandfather. The family had been from Seattle forever,
Uh-huh.
since the late 1800s. My great grandfather helped found the ski club that became Snoqualmie Pass back in
Oh, wow.
in the
Holy
early
smokes.
1900s. Yeah, so
Right.
it's like,
Wow.
it's
Wow.
just a
Wow.
part
Wow.
of who we are. So
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
I went to school up there, came out here and rode, and that really changed my
You did
life.
very well. Very, very competitive
Yeah,
lightweight years.
yep, yeah,
Couple
and very
couple of championships in there, right?
yeah. So two IRA championships, two
Awesome.
Eastern Sprints championships.
Great.
We were undefeated all 4 years in our regular season while I was here. But at the same time, you had that going on the heavyweight side, and you had it going on the women's
Yeah.
side. Um, it was a cool environment to be in.
Yeah,
And
sure. Absolutely.
I was around a lot of coaches that I learned from them too. So,
Yeah.
I graduated. I initially was going to go back to Brentwood and
Hmm.
teach history and coach rowing, and
Hmm.
I couldn't get a visa. So I had a job, but I couldn't get into the country to work, and so
Hmm.
I didn't have a job. And Joe Murtaugh, who was my coach here, said, "Hey, look, we would love to have you come back as a volunteer
Hmm.
assistant, and you can cut your teeth in coaching."
Uh-huh.
Uh, and
Did
that's
was Had that ever occurred to you? Was it just sort of like somewhat fortuitous? You just kind of fell into it, said, "Hey, why don't you hang out?" Or did you think like, I think maybe coaching is the direction I might want to explore? Because I think
yeah,
it,
I
it
mean,
goes either way for a lot of people. Some people just
yeah,
fall into it, and some people graduate
yeah.
and they're like, "This is what I want to do for the rest of my life."
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that I had a plan that it was what I like. I wasn't emphatically set on this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, but I did
Right.
want to try it. Um,
Right.
and I was having a conversation with somebody a couple of days ago, and they asked me, like it's been so. This is actually my 26th year of coaching here, and
Wow.
they're like, so God, did how have you done that? How have you you know created this longevity? And I was like, I don't know. Because like time has flown, and I'm
Yeah.
still super fortunate to be here.
Right.
It's such a cool place to be a coach. I mean, amazing athletes.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
bright, they're motivated, they're good people. I'm
Yeah.
surrounded by awesome coworkers, like the coaches that I
Mhm.
work with here.
Yeah.
It's a cool learning environment, and I love
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
for me, that's a big piece of it. But also, like the lifestyle piece, to come back to the training piece,
Right.
um, I do, I have my day built
Mhm.
around having an opportunity to work out every
Really?
single
Okay.
week. Yeah. So and that is something that I feel like, and it's not a big crazy workout.
Hmm.
And it's pretty fluid. Like a lot of
Hmm.
times, hey, this is the window I actually now legitimately have available.
Hmm.
It's,
Okay.
I would say, my standard workout during the season, when, in academic time, uh, 40 to 50 minutes is what I do.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
I replace volume with intensity.
Uh-huh. All right. All right. All
So
right. All right.
uh, I go a little harder. I do not row.
Hmm.
I haven't rowed very much in the last decade.
Okay.
People often ask me why not. I look out the window right now and it's gorgeous out. The water's
Right. Right.
perfect, and my response to them is, I don't know. Do you like to work out in your office? Like, like for me, it's like a chance to separate a little bit from work for a bit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
to ride bikes. And
Okay.
so that's been my thing for the last, 12 or 15 years. Before that, I ran a lot. Um, my knees started
Let's
to tell me I needed to change it up.
Sure. Let's get into the weeds a little bit because okay, so
Yeah.
you're first of all you're setting aside a specific time of day to do that, and you say you're
Mhm.
actually building the day around that. Presumably, you've got a morning training session with the team, and potentially there's an afternoon session as well. Maybe maybe both, maybe one or the other. But you're sort of you are actually putting an intention around when you are going to do something for yourself or be active or train or work out or for an hour to 50 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
And
what does that look like? Is that just I'm going to get on the bike and I'm going to go for 10 miles, 20 miles, or
yeah, I
is it
mean, so
indoor?
like I'm super fortunate where we are here. So if you've been to Princeton, it's a pretty awesome area.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
right
yeah,
on
yeah,
the
yeah.
edge of a lot of rural land. And
Right,
so
right.
and I live at the edge of town. So I live about a mile and a half from campus,
Hmm.
right sort of where you would start heading into that more rural space.
Hmm.
And so it's easy for me to be here at the boathouse. I can bomb home. I'm home in 5 or 6 minutes, quick change, and I go out for a ride.
Hmm.
And there's some amazing stuff. I can just totally check out and get out into, you know, the countryside and have an
Yeah, yeah,
awesome
yeah.
ride without a ton of traffic, and come right home, quick shower, and I'm back. And so I try to do that for me. I have my morning, and like I've got two girls. They're getting a
Hmm.
little bit older now, so I'm not as
Right, right,
busy, but my wife works. She's got
right.
the real job in the family. Like
Yeah,
she's a doc, so she's busy. And so
yeah.
I help with the girls in the morning, um, because I can't be around in the evening. We row in the evenings here. And
Right, right,
so
right.
I help with the girls. I do a little work, and then I crank out my workout. I'd say I'd do it, probably somewhere between 10 and 11 is when I hit the road. I'm back so I can finish that, grab a shower, get lunch,
Mhm. Are
and
you
sit.
are so there's a fair bit of steady state cardio work in there, endurance work. Are you doing any kind of strength training on top of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's something that I was actually having dinner with a buddy last night that I rode with here,
Hmm.
and talked about how I needed to do more. I
Hmm.
do. I think as I'm getting older, it's something that probably I should add more. I do a little bit. One thing that I
Hmm.
have added in the last 4 years is yoga, um,
Okay. Yeah.
and uh, primarily yin style yoga. That's what I do the most. What I realized was that I was because I was riding the bike a lot, and rowers actually deal with this as well. You don't fire your glutes as much as you probably should,
Right.
and they can oftentimes like just they are not firing, create some
Right. 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 Right.
stiffness. I was inflexible. My back would get tight and sore,
Yeah.
um, and so I do it every night. I like
Really?
I use the Down Dog Yoga app. There's nothing
Yeah. Okay.
fancy with what I do, and I do a
Right.
yin.
And let me just say, the number of apps out there that are available and actually do a pretty good job of just sort of guiding you through something quick.
Yep.
That when I was coaching the athlete, I used to promote this workout app called Swork It, which just had all these workouts in it, mostly body weight stuff. And the athletes would kind of tease me. I'd be like, you can make jokes, but like if you're looking for a quick 20-minute body weight workout, it'll give you something like that. Like, don't discount the app, right? Like, even though
No,
we're
totally.
professionals, like we could, if we wanted to, we could sit down and write something out and be like, yeah, this is great. But
But
we don't want to spend
that's
time
what I
doing that.
do for a living, right? So I
Right,
actually like to be told what to do
right,
sometimes.
right,
Like, and
right, 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 right.
it's so great. Like I can do it when it fits in my schedule. So like the idea of going to a class is challenging because my
Yeah,
my day is slightly different. Like I don't finish work at a time where it fits. The mornings are busy, so I can't go and
yeah,
like take a class in the morning. Um, I just know I wouldn't like I would get tied up and I would miss it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
this is great. I mean, it's like I walk downstairs uh, at some point between 9:15 and 9:30 every night,
yeah,
and I do it. It's a 30-minute thing, and I feel awesome. and I'm ready for bed. I've like kind of checked out a little bit, and then I go to bed. And
Yeah.
that's been a huge boost for me. And I do some yoga, some like full practices through that same app to try to build up, like working on just simple body weight strength and balance. Especially when I'm getting ready for the ski season, to make sure that I'm thinking about balance properly, things like that.
How much advanced planning are you doing? Are you sitting there going like, well, I did an hour of this. I did just straight steady state cardio here. Maybe I should do some more intervals in here. Are you mapping it out at all? Or are you just sort of like, this is what I feel like today?
More what I feel like. I mean, I do.
Yeah.
So I look at the week and say, like one thing that I do try to do, and I think I learn by doing things.
Sure,
and so
sure.
if I'm thinking about, like, I know I'm not going to do the same amount of volume that I would have my athletes do. Like, I'm not that fit.
Yeah. Right.
I could survive that. But I do believe, number
right.
one, I think, hey, if I'm asking them to do something, I need to understand what it is I'm asking them to do. I need to know how it fits within a training block and how it fits within the training week. And so, yeah, I do sort of mirror their schedule. Like, hey, if I'm planning a hard day, I will do something harder. And I kind of see how I feel. And like if I'm going to think about trying to add some additional work in the week where, okay, we're going to do a couple days back to back, I will try to do it. And if I'm feeling kind of crappy, I'm like, all right, like, is that me? Like, do I need to think about that? So,
well, it's an interesting test bed, and I think it could vary from coach to coach and from program to program. But one thing that I certainly used to do, I don't do it as much anymore, but one of the great things about coaching is the being able to craft a workout. Like, we all have our go-to staple workouts that we use, but to actually sit down and think, okay, this is what I'm trying to achieve. This is the result, and to sort of creatively put something together that's going to engage the athletes, right? You don't always know that it's going to work exactly the way you plan it. So you're like, all right, you know what? I'm going to actually do this and see how well it works, right?
Absolutely.
Particularly if there's like, if there's variables in the target splits or rating or something like that, or, timing it from a rest interval perspective. So, it's a great point. Like, one way to stay active and stay fit as a coach is do the workout that you prescribe, maybe not with the athletes, but like a day or two before, or maybe the night before, right? I mean,
absolutely.
why not?
And what I think I've found as well is, like, I will, I'll sniff around for different styles of workouts that are actually designed for the bike. And I may take it and turn it into a rowing workout. One of the things that I often say to folks is a good coach is a good thief. Like, go out and like see some things and maybe try it for yourself. And like one of the workouts that, as we get into the 2000 meter erg season, like, coming up here soon, one of the workouts that we actually do is 8x500 meter workout with two of those pieces, like pieces 1, 2, 3, and 4, and pieces 6 and 7 are at your 2K pace. Pieces 5 and 8 are actually 2 to 3 splits faster than your 2K. And there's 2 minutes rest in between each 500.
Okay.
That workout I took directly from one of the USA track and field coaches who coaches the steeplechase. And that was a workout that he was doing with his athletes to teach them how to be in the pain cave and then kick at the end. And so, like, you kind of get into it, then you spike the lactate, and then you have to come back and be on pace, and it sucks. It's painful. You just learn how to deal with it and develop some confidence and trust. I actually tried that on the bike for a while before I did it with. I had to figure out, okay, like, he was doing distance, and I'm like, okay, those distances don't line up. About how long is it? How does the
Right.
rest work?
Right.
So I played with it. I'll tell you, it's a hard workout, and it's awesome. But yeah, I mean, I think I do use my training
Yeah.
um to think about some of that
Yeah.
stuff. Um, at the same time, I also use it as a window to not think. Like I
Right.
find that when I go out and I start working out, for the way that I'm wired, like a lot of people told me, "Oh, you should meditate." Like that doesn't work for me. Like
No.
when I sit by myself in a quiet room, I think more. Okay,
Right.
like fine, tell me I'm not doing it right. You're totally
Right.
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 But for
Right.
me,
Right.
when I
Right.
go and
Right.
I work out, it gets simple. Like this is the way I'm wired. And I
Yep.
just I'm in the moment. I actually get some really awesome ideas. Sometimes if
Yeah.
it's really good, I will pull over and I'll type it into my phone super quick. Just don't
Yeah.
forget,
Yeah. Yeah.
don't forget
Yeah.
that.
That's
But
good. That's
I
good.
like that. For me, I, it is, I think, especially for younger coaches that are out there and they're thinking
Yeah.
about this, like, oh, but I've got a lot of work to do.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know what's more important, your career or your life. And being healthy is
Right.
really, really, really important. It's actually the job that we're in, trying to encourage athletes to be stronger and fitter and to develop a routine around that, develop
Hmm.
consistency, to
Hmm.
trust their hard work and be tough. And if we as coaches are sitting around and we're kind of like, eating poorly and we're like kind of dumpy, I, I'm sort of like, like you that
Yeah.
what message are you sending? You're like, oh yeah, well,
Yeah.
okay, well, I'm apparently more busy than you are. And I know
Right.
those people are busy, and it's just not true. So I can do
Right.
it.
And that's the irony of those conversations sometimes, because we're constantly talking to athletes about time management, about they're
Yep.
trying to balance their school and the rowing together,
Yep.
and and set them up in a situation where they're able to carry that forward into their careers of managing, taking care of themselves, and also being professionally productive.
Yep.
But a lot of times you see, and I don't want this to take sort of more of an accusatory tone, but you don't necessarily see coaches practicing that themselves, right? Right.
That's what I actually see when I have my guys that join me the year after they graduate to do our internship.
Right.
And they're like, what do I do today? I was like, dude, you're the coach. That's your boat. Go for it. And they're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and one of the first things they say is like, that's actually really hard. Like, you do actually plan this stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not just
Yeah.
making it up as we're going. But I think that so it's good to be able to
Yeah.
have be on all sides of it
Right.
and
Right. Right. Are there moments throughout the training season where, like, particularly in the spring, you're doing a lot more travel, you're going here, you're going there, where you feel um, like I'm just not going to get a workout in for the next week? Does that
yeah,
happen?
I would say rarely. So
Yeah.
even so, like where it would happen is if we have a road trip where we have to leave early, then
Right.
yes, I will. It ends up being a 4-day week for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like if I can wake up and crank out a workout before I hop in the trailer, I will do it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because I actually, for me as well, like I know, like I've got a lot of energy. Like I need that routine.
Yeah.
Um, that it helps me be a better coach.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and my mood is better too.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you think is the longest you've gone without working out in recent memory?
Mm. Maybe 4 or 5 days.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, I'm not, like
Great.
I will build it. It drives my wife crazy, but like when we go on vacation, like vacation for me is that's an opportunity to work out.
Yeah. Right.
And,
Right. Right. Right.
I've learned like okay, like the one thing I know she absolutely hates is when she sees me packing my bike case. Um, and so like,
It's on, right? Oh
yeah,
yeah,
so
it's on.
I am mindful of that now.
Right. 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 Right.
But I think that's what I love about vacation as well. I mean, I
Right.
like, and I can mix it up. I can swim, I can run, hike really hard, like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
winter time, I transition. I do a lot of backcountry skiing in the
Right.
winter.
Right. Right.
And that's something I love. And I think one of the changes that I've seen when I'm out of season,
Hmm.
uh, so in the summer months, I
Hmm.
do more. I don't go crazy, like I'm not out for 3, 4 hours a day,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
might throw one of those in each week where I
So
just
that's an important distinction because I think, as athletes and coaches, we tend to sort of focus on, the water, the machine, the basement, the weight room. But you're also really active just because you get outside and you're doing stuff, either hiking or skiing or running, like casually running. Talk a little bit more about that. Is that something that just kind of organically happens also, or do you say like this weekend we're going to go on a 5, 6, 10 mile hike?
yeah, I mean, I think look, one of the things that I love about rowing, I think what attracted me to it when I first started
Mm-hmm.
is I love being in the elements. I love being
Right.
outside. There's something
Yeah.
awesome to me about a sport that there's more to it than just being big and strong, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
obviously you obviously have to there's the skill and the technique of moving a boat and then doing it with people, but there's also the elements, right?
Right.
Um, and I love that. I mean, like some people I know it drives them crazy. I think that's actually what's really cool about rowing, and makes it unique. And yeah, sometimes makes it a little unfair. Like I get it, but that's
Right.
rowing, right? And
Right.
oh, you're gonna
Right.
race
Right.
on
Right.
a course. Oh, but that course isn't fair. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? This race is we've got cup races that we race every year that have been around since the 1870s, and they've been
Right.
rowed on those same courses. And that is what the cup race is. It
Right.
isn't, oh, hey, now
Right.
we want to move it to some, you know, petri dish.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. Right.
that's
Right.
what's cool.
Giant
Yeah.
swimming pool.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
about the Child's Cup. Forever it was run on the Harlem River. I remember the first year I coached the Child's Cup. I cannot tell you how spooked I was. Like that place is crazy,
Right.
but
Right. Right. Right.
it's exciting, and I think about that as well. Like I like to expose myself to the environment, and okay, there's a lot of other things that I have to make sure that I'm on top
Right.
of. So like, as I've become uh more passionate about backcountry skiing, like
Hmm.
learning about snow science, taking my avalanche courses,
Right.
uh and like that's I mean, okay, like you can't just go and ski it, like you could die. And like I think that's actually like that's the
Yeah.
stuff that I love.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
Now that I have my kids are 15 and 12, and my older daughter, she gets some longer breaks now with some of her, like she's going to a different school, and so
Hmm.
like we will go spend a week skiing and backcountry skiing, and she loves it
Yeah.
now. It's this cool
Yeah.
place. It's a way for us to still get to do something together for as long as she's willing to tolerate me, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
like,
Right.
keep
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah. So
and my wife is the same way. She's very active, so it's great.
I think that's really important because I think for, some coaches that maybe they get out of it, right? And they get very focused on sitting at the desk and answering emails. And the idea of jumping on the erg or jumping on the bike is really, really into like just go outside,
Yes.
go for a walk, and or, just try and walk fast, right? Like get in the habit. I think like really start to just getting yourself up out of the chair for an hour, right? It's really easy to sit there and be like, oh, I've got 100 emails from recruits I got to answer, and I want to answer every single one of them, right? But you're literally dying as you're sitting there.
Well, I mean, like, and I shared this story a few days ago, but last summer we with our family we actually went and did a trip on the Rogue River, out in Southern Oregon. It was where my wife grew up, and
Right.
and her parents really wanted to take our kids, like take their grandkids on this river trip while they still could, and
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and I'd done it once before, like such an amazing experience. So I was super
Mhm.
excited to get the chance to do this with everybody. And whatever. I mean, when you do it, like you drive up into the Rogue River Canyon, and where you put in, like there's no cell service, and there's no cell service for 5 days. I
Wow.
came
Okay.
back online and my phone went nuts. And I mean, I was like 420, 480 emails, like wham. 3 of those messages I kept. So in
Yeah.
5 days, so I think that's the thing, is like, is it really that important? Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you do, as a coach, I think it for your, and I learned this from Curtis Jordan, who, I mean, so I like,
All right.
he, he was he had a huge impact on my life. I mean, he obviously is the person who hired me here,
Right. Right.
and took a huge gamble on a guy who was 1 year out of college. Mike Tatey was the freshman coach before me, right? And he was
Right.
replacing Mike Tatey, who slightly more experienced than me.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. Right. Right.
and
Right. Right. Right.
he took a gamble on me, right?
Uh-huh.
One of the things that he always told me is, if you want to have a long career in this, in this profession, you need to take time for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think there's 2 ways to do it. I think the one way is the vacation. I think you have to have it, or some sort of separation where you do leave and go, and
Right.
your family and go do that stuff, right? And then the second thing is in the day. I think you need to have a moment that's yours, right? Um,
Yeah.
and we are fortunate that we can do it. So I mean, I think it, I encourage everybody to make time. Uh,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
will it will positively impact your ability to coach and educate kids.
Yeah. So if you, let's say that, there's a coach that comes to you, a young coach looking for advice, saying, I've just gotten so wrapped up in the job and I haven't done anything in a year, let's say, and I've gained 15 pounds. I don't feel great. What would you think? What would you say to them? What do you think their first step would be to sort of
Yeah,
get back on course?
yeah. I mean, I would say, like, number one, like, you start small. Like, don't go out and say, okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna, like, 60 minutes. Like, no.
Right. Right.
Like,
Right. 2K,
um,
go. Right.
yeah, and I think, okay, so like you need to have a daily habit, right? So
Yeah.
you got to build it in. And what I've found is, like, don't be crazy. Like, okay, we as coaches, we measure a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we as athletes and as rowers, as competitive
Right.
rowers, we
Right.
um
Right.
step away from that, right?
Yeah.
Like, go, hey, that's where, like, go for a run,
Yeah.
and who cares how fast? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, and that's where, like, hey, heart rate can be helpful, because what you
Yeah.
may, if you've got any experience with it from previous, your previous athletic career,
Yeah.
you understand kind of where you need to be doing some steady state, and that's all you really need to do. You don't
Yeah.
need to go and, fire up the GPS and start trying to run splits, right?
Right. Right.
um and
In,
I
in a
mean,
way, it doesn't. In a way, it doesn't really matter, right? Like ultimately, like
yep,
even if you think about people rowing 100 years ago, they didn't have all this gadgetry. Like they just went out and rowed, and they tried to,
yep,
when it felt good to go fast, they tried to go fast. When it felt good to race, they tried to race, right? It was a lot of just feeling it, right? And I think if you're going to get if you've been very sedentary and you want to feel good, like that's the thing. Like we all started as athletes. We all got into rowing because we loved being a rower and being an athlete. And then the idea that you would stop being an athlete and start being a coach, like those are two separate things, is
yeah,
really like I never was able to process that,
yeah,
and I don't know if you've heard this before. I'm gonna make a statement. I've heard coaches in the past say, well, I can't hold the splits anymore, so I'm not going to bother trying anymore, right? Like, if I can't hold a 2-minute split for an hour, then what's the point, right? It's like,
I mean, and that you know what, I will say that I actually get. I mean, that's a one of the reasons that I don't. I mean, okay, like I rode at a pretty competitive level.
right,
After I graduated, the first 3 years I was out of school and I was here in Princeton, it was like the
right,
start of the Princeton Training Center, and I was rowing on the national team.
yeah,
Like that was rowing to me. Um, I did a little bit of like head of the Charles, Club 8
hmm
stuff, and
hmm
like, hey, if guys wanted to have like a fun row, I'm hopping a boat and go have some fun. And I tell them, hey, look, I'll be super fit. I'll be riding my bike a lot, but if you want to do an erg test, there's another guy out there for you. Like, I'm
yeah,
not doing an erg test.
yeah,
Um, I'm not gonna go do like, I'll give you 3 rows. Like, I'll go
right,
row the single, because I actually like the fall is like one of the best times to go out and ride the bike, and I want to be out there doing
right,
that.
right,
Um,
right,
and so, yeah, I get that one. And one of the
right.
reasons I don't row the single a lot is because, I was rowing pre GPS. So, like, we have, the 250 markers all down the lake. I can still do the math, and I catch myself doing it. I'm, not super fast in the single anymore. And the next thing I
Right.
know, looking at the clock, and I'm timing my 250s. I'm like, oh, like getting angry that I'm
Yeah.
not. I'm like,
All right.
what? Like, I don't want that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do think one of the things that I do think is important, like even if it's nasty out, um, I actually think it's good to get outside.
Yeah.
And so I will ride in the rain. I will ride if it gets like kind of, it's a little bit frosty and maybe the roads
hmm
aren't great. I
hmm
ride. We have the towpath here. I go ride the towpath, and
Right.
like, I may be freezing cold and beat up, but it's like I'm also asking my athletes to go row in marginal conditions, and so it's like,
Yeah.
okay, hey, look,
Yeah.
um, like I think it's important, and I
Yeah.
think it's healthy to be
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. And I think it sets an outstanding example for the athletes themselves, right? Like to see you potentially out there, when they're sort of walking around campus or whatnot, they may happen to see, Coach Greg like on the bike going by or coming into the boathouse on the bike or something like that. I think as we, going back to teaching them about time management and whatnot, imparting the idea that you don't stop being an athlete once you graduate from college, right? It's a conversation I have with all my athletes, whether they're, graduating from high school or from college. Like, one of the things, you never stop 2K testing in a way. And I mean that more in an existential way. Like, you're always going to be challenged. You're always going to have that moment where you sit down and, okay, I've got to perform right here. And I'm not looking forward to this moment, but I know I'm going to do my best, or I know I can perform my best, right?
No,
And
that's a
I think,
luxury. That's a
yeah,
luxury we are fortunate to have, and I
yeah,
think that's important for people to recognize. Like, that's the place that, like, we and like, not many people get that opportunity to get that in their lives,
right. Yeah,
and
yeah,
enjoy that, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, any, since we're talking about coaches and being active, are there any other coaches like you just want to give a shout out to that, like, this coach is just kicking butt and is out there every day and staying active, and anybody that you sort of want to recommend to follow or pay attention to?
It's funny. I mean, we're total competitors, but Mike Callahan and I, several times have gone on long bike trips together. Like, we actually
Really?
rode together, on the national team here. We
Right,
lived
right,
together, worked together up at Bloomberg Financial,
right,
um, when we were first getting started. Um, and he and I rode the Maratona to Dolomites together, which is it's a 1 day of race in the Dolomites, 88 miles and about 14,000 feet of climbing over 7 high mountain passes. We
Yeah.
went and spent a
Wow.
week over there getting ready for it.
Wow.
Um, and I just admire that. It's like, okay, like, similar mindset,
Yeah.
and I don't think we're alone. I think that's what you see. And, you just, I mean, look at Scott Franzen. The guy's, he was an Olympian and a triathlete, right? I mean, he's
Right.
like he's a total
Right.
stud. He
Yeah.
probably says, oh yeah, I don't hardly work out at all anymore. And then if you tried to go work out with him, you'd be like, where'd Scott go? Right. I mean, and I think that's what's cool, right? Like, just kind of being in touch with that. I do think that, hey, it is a release for a lot of us coaches.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, find your passion. And I think that's really important. Like, don't let it be sterile. For me, being inside, I don't enjoy it. Like, I do have a
Yeah.
trainer for, like, it's just not possible.
Right.
And I find it miserable. I really do. I will try to find some way to get outside. But
Yeah.
hey, look, I shop around and ask coaches this question. Like, I think for those younger coaches out there, when they're spending time, uh, hitting up the coaches for, how they approach certain situations with their team,
Yeah. That's a great piece of
uh,
advice. Yeah.
ask about lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, I think that is important. Like, how do you make it work? Same thing. Like, hey, do you have kids? How does that work for you? Like,
Yeah.
that's a big one. Like, that's a
Yeah.
big one.
Yeah. So it's significant.
Yeah.
I remember this is years and years ago, and this was kind of I mean, he has no idea. I'm going to tell a story. When I was a very young coach, we were racing Redwood Shores, and we were staying at the Sofitel there, which is right on the other side of right by the finish line there, and Redwood Shores, California, Sanford Invitational. And I was downstairs at the hotel getting some coffee, and I see Kevin Sauer come in, clearly coming back from a run, right? And then I was like, and then just this huge wave of guilt hit me, right? And I was like, damn it, why didn't I go for a run today? Oh hell, right? And then that was it. And then I was like, just because you're traveling doesn't mean, you like, in fact, it's really good before a race, before if your team's racing that morning, you have the time. Go out and have even a 20-minute run for yourself. So you just to get your head cleared and get focused, right? So I think the more senior coaches can make themselves available to demonstrate that or to talk to that about lifestyle management, the balance between coaching and good physical health, good mental health. Those are always great conversations.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So we're getting close to out of time here, and I want to be sensitive to your schedule. But one final question we always ask, and this is sort of a fun question. Doesn't even have to be related to the topic today, but it can be. You have a pro tip, sort of a pro tip for coaches, a hack that you've learned,
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. I think the
Very
biggest thing
pro
for me, we have the biggest thing for me with rowing coaches is I feel like, for whatever reason, rowing coaches I feel like it's a more insular group than, other, like, coaches from other sports. I
Yeah,
think that in other sports, there's a lot more, coaches.
sharing.
They're fierce competitors,
Right.
but they do share ideas. And it
Yeah.
isn't like, oh, these are my special little secrets, and this is what is gonna make me beat them. And if they've ever even knew we were doing it, oh my God. Like,
Right.
I
Right.
actually think in rowing, it's kind of like that's kind of BS. Like, it isn't actually true.
Right.
I think it's important that we do communicate, and I would encourage, like, do that. I mean, it's like, and I think I was very fortunate to be in an environment when I was first starting out, right? I had Joe Murtaugh and Curtis Gordon,
Right.
Lori Dolphiny, Mike Tatey was in the
Yeah.
boathouse coach in the national team, Tom Tahar. I like, not long after that, Chris Korzanowski gets added into the. You just start adding it all up.
Yeah.
And what was amazing with all of those folks was they were always really open to sharing, and I learned a lot. And
You know, go ahead, finish your thought.
no, and I just think like people need to do that. And then, and reverse it. Like, don't think that like it's okay to be honest and share.
Yeah, and what I was going to add to that is, and I have this conversation frequently, there and if you talk to court sports or field sports, right, they will have rules within the conference, within the league, what have you, no scouting, right? Like you can't go to somebody else's practice and sort of record what they're doing for plays and things. And I remember, we were when I was coaching D1, we had this rule about no scouting in our conference rules, and all the coaches were like, "What's that? What's that mean?" And the irony, of course, is that rowing is a completely offensive sport, right? It doesn't matter how much you know about the other crew. What you don't It doesn't matter if you know their erg scores. It doesn't matter if you know their height, weight. It doesn't matter if you know how much sleep they got the night before, right? The only thing that you can control as a coach is how prepared your crew is on race day. So why do we not share more information? Like not necessarily competitive information, but just information about training and best practices and schedules and things like that. Why is it such a secret?
No, I
I don't
agree.
know.
And I think like rowing, like this idea that it's like, there's a mystique about it, or it's like it's
Right.
different. I think that
Right.
needs to change in rowing. It is not
Yeah.
different. And
Yeah.
if we don't mainstream rowing, I think rowing, at the Division I level for men could go away, right? It's
Yeah.
let's actually be a part of the movement to advance college athletics and youth
Yeah.
sports, the Olympic, movement. Like, let's not be
Yeah.
dropped from the Olympics. How about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
But I think that, it's a small group. I think there's some awesome knowledge. And, I think about like, I mean, some of the best conversations I've had, some of the best learning I've had, is shooting the breeze with coaches around
Yeah.
race, right?
Yeah. 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 And yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So, hey, I want to thank you for your time. Amazing conversation. And yeah, yeah, don't go anywhere. Stay there. We're going to finish the conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully we'll be back up soon.
Thank you.